Hello everyone. Okay, I hope we're all well, having a wonderful day. What this session is going to be about today is the next bit of the course, which is looking at social change. So we've had a series of lessons and we've had a series of videos where I talked about agricultural changes, and you should be quite clear on similarities and differences across the period. We've had a number of lessons and YouTube lessons on industrialisation, and again, you should be fairly clear on what were the similarities across the period regarding that and the differences, and also for both the living and working conditions of the peasants and industrial workers. And again, did that change at all in the period? Did it stay the same across the period? All that type of stuff. So the last part, or the last section, I suppose, of the economy and society section is the society bit. So what I'm going to do today is that we're going to introduce the social changes that took place, and then next week we'll look at religion, and we'll look at some of the cultural things next week as well, and some of the similarities or differences that happened regarding Russian culture. So this lesson is going to be mainly on some big social changes and education. There are two big themes to have a look at. Now, using your work booklet, okay, as you can see, there's some questions based off part of the book using the Holland book. This is actually on Moodle. Okay, I've just been to have a look at it to make sure it is there. And basically, what you can see, and what it's discussing in the first part, is some of the population changes that took place. Between the 1850s and the end of our period, there was generally a population increase that took place. There were a couple of dips, one around the First World War, but generally speaking, there was a population increase in Russia, which obviously has some advantages and disadvantages. It means lots of young people, because the death rate remained quite high. People did not live a great long life. And looking at that stuff we've done about industrial workers and agricultural workers and their poor living and working conditions, it's probably not a great surprise that people didn't live a great long life even. But in terms of birth rate, that did increase quite a lot. So Russia obviously had quite a lot of young people living in the country, which causes strengths and weaknesses, or problems and opportunities for those who are governing a country with a fairly young population. Anyway, what I want you to do is to do these questions using the Holland book, because there are some issues we're trying to find out how many people there actually were. And then there's this bit here about the social structure. Again, you should be quite familiar with this, especially for the Tsars, because you will probably have come across, or you should have come across, this in a previous lesson. Probably near the beginning of the course, then this would have popped up. This famous diagram that was done of under the Tsars to kind of emphasise or show the Tsarist structure. It's come across a wee bit blurred, but as you can see at the very top here, this is about 2% of society. So you've got the Tsar and kind of the upper kind of nobility. In the middle here, these two groups, this is the clergy, so this is the church people, so those in the Orthodox Church. Here you've got some of your, I suppose we call them middle class today, like your managers of the businesses. So those people who Witt was kind of encouraging will be on here. And at the bottom here you've got the industrial workers and mainly peasants. Okay, it shows that Russia is a very agricultural country. It shows very hierarchical. You could have drawn a very similar chart to this in England in the 15th century or something. We had the king and nobility at the top, bunch of peasants at the bottom. Obviously, you wouldn't have industrial workers there, but you've had a few more of the wealthy kind of landowners and stuff. Okay, so we then need to think about how that would have changed under the communists, because you might have expected a great big radical change, but actually the communist system was also fairly hierarchical. They had a certain structure. So you had obviously Lenin or Stalin or Khrushchev and the small elite at the top of the Communist Party. Obviously the Russian Orthodox Church people weren't there, but then there's about 1.5 million workers in the 1930s had managerial roles and had special privileges for having managerial roles under the communist system. And then of course at the bottom you had your average industrial worker or agricultural worker. Okay, keep getting emails. And then the final part, which you need to do, is you need to use the textbooks about education policies. Okay, it says use 100 and 103. Okay, so you need to find out and use the book to find out what primary education took place under the Tsars, and then how did primary education look like under the communists. And you'll find it was different. Lenin was quite different to Stalin, for example, regarding his education policies. Same for secondary and higher stroke university education. Khrushchev as well makes some interesting innovations as well. So you complete the policies which both of them had and be thinking all the way through, what are the similarities between these rulers and what are the differences between them. And then just to emphasise the difference between Lenin and Stalin, because there's quite a strong difference between the two, looking a bit more detail about these two rulers and how they did education, what style of teaching was encouraged, what type of education structure did they favour. Was Lenin more like the Tsars in terms of how he wanted education, or was Stalin more like the Tsars? And as I said, Khrushchev also made some interesting changes as well, especially to the higher up in education. So he's worth having a look at as well and thinking about similarities and differences. So this making links with the past is all about, these similarities and differences. And again, I've emphasised Lenin and Stalin because they were quite different in their education kind of aims and also what they thought were good methods as well. Okay, so if you get that done, and then I'll upload the next video, which will be about Russian religion and religion across the Russian Empire. I don't know, it might be the weekend or it might be very early next week. Okay, any problems or issues, feel free to let me know and I will do my best to assist you and help you with them.